Okay, so welcome back to the AHP Preceptorship podcast. Today we're really pleased to be doing an in-person podcast. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, James. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your profession, and where and when you qualified?
Yeah, so my name is James Lloyd. I'm a physio. I qualified about 2 years ago now, 2.5 years. I qualified in Bristol at UE. Since then, I've been working in HCRG as a rotational Band 5 physio.
Fabulous. And we always love to hear what led you on a path to becoming an AHP.
It's not really a straightforward answer, I think. Yeah, so it was always one of those interview questions I kind of dreaded, like, why do you want to be a physio? Because there wasn't one kind of defining moment where I thought, this is the career for me. It's not something that anyone in my family's done. I had seen physios because I'd had a few running injuries, but it wasn't something then that I was like, oh, I really want to do that. I think it was because I came into physio a little bit later in life. I was previously working in IT, got a bit bored of being stuck behind a desk, and then decided I wanted to kind of do the gap year thing, went travelling, spent a couple of years in Australia, and while I was out there, I ended up doing a medical trial. So it was about kind of asthma inhalers and how the drug kind of gets into your body and how long it takes to decay. I think I found that quite interesting, being in kind of a medical environment. And that kind of turned me onto the idea of looking into kind of more healthcare related jobs. And I liked the sound of physio because having that little bit of contact with physio before, I think it kind of suited my personality, the kind of problem solving nature of a physio. And I really like the idea of not too many night shifts. I'll be honest, but I'll
Say it, yeah.
But that's something you can't really say at a university to me. So yeah,
But then you're qualified, you could say it at this podcast.
Oh, what an interesting journey. I didn't know that about your story and path. And we always say that NHPs always have a bit of a wiggly route to becoming an AHP. They don't, for a lot of AHPs, it's not something they always wanted to do, and it was like their ultimate passion. There was either like a lived experience or they knew that they wanted to work within healthcare and kind of found their way to it.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's always nice to hear people's journey into AHP. And it's nice that you kind of had a bit of, it wasn't straight from like school. It was something that was, like you said, a little bit further along. So you knew that you didn't want to sit behind a desk and you had that experience. And that's the wonderful thing about being an AHP, isn't it? That we're actually it's a vocational role, and we're out there, we're helping people.
Yeah, it's very varied.
Yes.
No 2 days are the same, I find.
Yeah. But different maybe to IT.
Yeah.
No.
Trying to fix people rather than fix computers.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad that you found your way to physio.
Yeah. And obviously I know you qualified from University of West England. Me too, fellow alumni. It would be really interesting to hear, a little bit about your first post. So after you qualified, your first post, how did you feel about qualifying from uni, and how did you start and settle into that role?
Yeah, so actually as I qualified in 2021, it was kind of on the kind of tail end of COVID times. And I managed to get through placements without too much disruption. But I think coming in to my first job after the kind of disruption and all the issues that were going on in COVID, I did feel a little underprepared, I think, coming into being a Band 5. But thankfully, the last placement I had was really positive. So I was coming in on a little bit of a high with clinical placements from university, and then coming into first post as a Band 5, I think I was understandably excited and nervous. I think it's scary getting your first job, And particularly as the first post I was coming into was an MSK outpatients post, and I hadn't had that on rotation since first year. So it had been a long time.
The world was looking a little bit different as well.
Yeah. So I was having to come in and do a bit more telephone kind of work in outpatients, because that's how they'd then changed their arthritis pathway. But thankfully on my last placement, which was rheumatology, I got a little bit of kind of telephone experience, because a lot of the rheumatology patients were obviously shielding during COVID. So there was limited patient contact on that placement, but I managed to make a good placement of it. So came in feeling quite confident, but it was difficult to adjust being a band 5.
You're soon hit with the realities of practice, aren't you?
Yeah, I think as a student you kind of get a bit more breathing time to kind of do things, whereas when you come in as a band 5, the pace and the expectations just noticeably higher.
Especially as you went into a naturally fast-paced environment as well. So yeah, not only do you have a bit more breathing space as a student, you went into one of the places that is expecting you to move quickly.
Yeah. And as there was still a little bit of disruption within that rotation because of COVID, there was some redeployment. So the band 6 that I was working underneath ended up getting redeployed, and they did bring over a different band 6, and we were working as a kind of a more skeleton staff in that department. There was only really the 2 of us full time, other than the kind of the more advanced physios, which kind of had their own little world that they live in, a bit separate from us. So it felt like the support I got initially was disrupted because of redeployment. So that made it, again, more challenging on top of already being quite a difficult situation.
Luckily, you started your preceptorship. Obviously, it was a little bit further along, wasn't it? How far into your post were you when you eventually...
I think I was just under a year. Because I did half a rotation through outpatients, and then I'd moved over into the community reablement team by the time I joined up for the preceptorship. Which is not quite as fast paced, but probably a bit more chaotic and varied and complex in terms of the patient demographic. But yeah, the pace was a bit different, which allowed me, I think, to kind of focus on building up those skills and spend a bit of time developing myself, rather than just feel like I've hit the ground running and then it's all moving a little bit too fast and I'm tripping over myself.
Absolutely. But hey, we're here today.
Yep, we've got
and we've signed you off. So this is actually your official sign-off day for preceptorship, which is amazing. A round of applause. Yeah, and we're obviously really proud of you. And obviously, during your preceptorship period, you were rotational.
Yeah.
And some of the rotations, there were some challenging times. And we've kind of had our discussions and reflections. And how do you feel that preceptorship kind of helped supported you through those challenging and difficult times?
I think it's been a nice constant, because with rotating, it's like starting a brand new job every 6 months for me. And the people you're working with are completely different. The job role is completely different. There's a lot of change when you rotate, and it can be a stressful time when you rotate, adjusting to a new job, but having kind of the preceptorship in the background as that constant that kind of keeps you grounded a little bit, and something to focus on to keep you, bringing you back to yourself. And okay, where am I going and how am I developing myself, rather than getting absorbed by the kind of the problems of the team or the job that you're currently in. I think it helps focus you on kind of the bigger picture of, rather than getting tunnel visioned into the immediate problem that might be happening in that team or that with that patient at the time, to kind of develop you through your career. And I think it gives you a bit of perspective in that way, so you don't get overwhelmed by all the other problems.
And there were periods where it did impact your preceptorship engagement, didn't it? Because we noticed maybe when you weren't engaging so much, and we would always reach out. And I think that's with a lot of preceptees, if they are going through a particularly difficult period, they may disengage with the process a little bit more. But we're always there to come back to when you've maybe gone through that difficult period. Or
particularly when I went back and looked at the certificates from the meetings, there's a noticeable gap of a period that aligned exactly with when I rotated. So it was after I'd rotated from the community team it became it seemed unmanageable for me, and it didn't feel like I was given the time by that department to engage with the preceptorship. It definitely fell off my radar. I think there was a little bit of guilt about that, but I think because you're so supportive, that's what got me through. And I could come back, and the fact that you checked in and you seem more concerned about my well-being rather than any kind of criticism for not turning up to the things, it came from a genuine place that felt like I was welcomed back, rather than it seeming like an extra stress.
We always are worried about people's well-being, especially as you had engaged, and then so it was a very sudden, and it was maybe after 2 or 3 sessions we were okay, we're getting concerned now. It's not like maybe you've just had annual leave, or it's coincide with the meetings. So I think it's really nice to have external sources of support as well. So it's really nice to hear you say that you knew it was coming from a genuine place, because it absolutely was. And I think with us being external, we're not caught up in those, as Felicity said, the realities of practice, and we can kind of take that step away because we're not in that, and just be no, your progression and your well-being is our most important thing, and it should be really important for you. So, thank you for being open about the fact that you had those challenges, and it would just be really interesting to hear your perspective of, did preceptorship, do you feel like it was an element that helps retain you in your job or in the profession at all?
Yeah, so I think there was definitely, when I had those kind of difficult times, I was considering leaving kind of my job, and I was questioning whether it was the right profession in me overall. I think we often struggle with that kind of imposter syndrome, particularly as a newly qualified, and I kind of allowed those dark thoughts to kind of spiral into, maybe this isn't the job for me, the profession for me, maybe I should go back to kind of what I'd done before. But I think having, like you said, you guys as an external point of contact, and the support that you kind of gave to kind of encourage me through, definitely did help keep me in my job and in remaining a physio. Because I'm not sure how to say. It was definitely really challenging. But I'm glad that I got through it, and how I said before, how it acted as that kind of constant that grounded me and gave me that bigger picture, rather than kind of really kind of spiraling down into that tunnel vision, negative thought place where you don't make kind of sensible, rational decisions. And I would have ended up regretting it had I have left the profession. I think
putting all that hard work into
such an investment into your vocation, and then something that you're passionate about, helping others. So it would have been such a shame, as you say, when imposter syndrome layered with challenging times and maybe support that's patchy, when they all coincide, it's easy to spiral, and it would happen to anyone. But as you say, when you're kind of in that dark place, of course the thoughts of, is this the right thing for me, it's natural to think those. So I'm really pleased that you felt like there was something that was constant to keep bringing you back to being like, no, I want to do this, and I have this direction and this support and structure to come back to. And I think that that's been really recognised now with the preceptorship kind of frameworks being released, that actually maybe we were losing people who had invested themselves in a profession because we weren't showing our investment in them when they first started. So I'm really pleased that you had that I'm pleased that you found that there was that constant that you could come back to. And well done for getting through it. Because we all have dark times in our career and they're really challenging. And you also qualified during a global, and studied during a global pandemic. So that was something that Felicity and I didn't experience, but we've heard the voices of many people who had, and that coming out of feeling maybe not as prepared as possible because of patients being affected, as you say, less hands-on patient time. All those factors can really, really impact you. So I'm glad that Preceptorship provided that structure as well.
Absolutely. And there's those startling stats, and it's the first 2 years that are crucial in order to retain somebody because of all those kind of realities of practice, that imposter syndrome, those challenging and difficult maybe team dynamics or support. So I think it's like 10%.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it's 1 in 18 deregister from the HCPC within 4 years. That's a huge number.
Yeah, I was looking at the NHS staff survey actually quite recently, and some of the figures and stats on there, it highlights there's big peaks and troughs in those figures around COVID times, and it's completely understandable. And having support, particularly as a newly qualified, is so important, because when you look at those stats and you consider that's for the profession as a whole, that's very experienced people that are saying these things about their job and how difficult it is, and then you've got the brand new people trying to come in when the experienced people are already saying how hard it is. It's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with HCRG as well, they're a private organisation. So, there may be times that maybe that felt a bit isolating. Do you feel that Preceptorship gave you that bigger community and further support? And did you find comfort in this? Because that's one of our main bits of feedback, is that wider AHP community.
Yeah, it was definitely good to kind of speak with the other Band 5s and share some of the kind of concerns. And I think it was quite nice to kind of, in the breakout rooms, talk to some people that are going through the same struggles, have that kind of networking, and see that, you're not alone. You're not the only one that's struggling. Everyone's kind of feeling the same thing. It gave you that kind of reassurance that we're all kind of suffering through. Yeah. We can all get through together. Yeah. And to kind of use the support that you can, and you can kind of bounce ideas around and see how everyone else is coping and pick their brains. Whether it's the difficulty of kind of getting that time to come to the podcast, to come to the meetings for the preceptorship, ring fencing that own time for yourself, and it can be difficult, but hearing and connecting with those other people, I think, is really important.
You feel the guilt, don't you?
Yeah, because when you know that there's a demand and the patient's there and they need your help, it's hard to put your own needs first, because we all get into these jobs because we want to help people, and we tend to find that we don't leave any room for ourselves in our lives. As particularly healthcare professionals, I think we're the worst for it. But it's so important, because the classic saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah. You've got to look after yourself, and it's going to make you better in your job. But it does feel like sometimes you have to push back against that a little bit from the dynamics and whichever team you may be in. But I think it's really important as newly qualified to kind of create that network and that support group amongst peers, because there might be people that you're working with that have done the job for 20 years plus that just think you should get on and get going, and you don't need to focus on yourself. You'll just learn as you go. But I think it's
a different world now.
Yeah, times have changed and it's challenging.
Yes. And you're going to be hopefully that new wave of people that, because you've recognised the need to invest in your well-being and your time as a Band 5, that as cohorts carry up through the banding, hopefully you'll carry that with you, and it will look different. The investment in Band 5s in 5-10 years is going to look very different to 2020. Kind of 2021. I think it's just taken a long time for us to recognise, as you say, our own well-being is just as important as our patients' well-being. And as you say, you can't pour from an empty cup. I think that summarises everything about preceptorship so nicely. New catchphrase. Okay, so thinking about real positives again within the portfolio, where now you've completed your portfolio, and as Felicity said, we signed you off today. Do you have a standout competency or a standout aspect of the portfolio?
I think probably the thing I'm most proud of is that I've become a CSP Steward. So for the Chartered Society of Physiotherapists, which is our kind of union body, it's the only physiotherapy-specific union. And I've become a kind of a rep, or they call it a steward, which means I'll be kind of a point of contact for anyone that's a union member, to kind of help them through any workplace issues. And particularly one of the issues I've been working on with the other steward that is in HCRG, because we're both very new stewards. We are the only HCRG stewards, I believe, now. And we've been working to try and get our staff here that are on our Agenda for Change contracts to be given the payment that was given out across all NHS staff, the back payment that was in, I think, 2022. When we got that 5% pay rise, there was also a kind of a lump sum payment with it. And although we at HCRG, we've received that 5% pay rise, we didn't get that bonus payment. So I've been trying to encourage and kind of drum up support to kind of push back against the senior management here to get that payment. And it's still a work in progress, but I have managed to encourage some physios in this area to put together a collective grievance and kind of express that formally to HCRG. And it's something I'm currently working on, and hopefully we will get that money in the future.
We're wishing you luck with that, because obviously you deserved, and one amazing role to take on, and literally linked with every aspect of the portfolio as well, because it's your communication, personal and people development, quality, unity, diversity, art, leadership, huge role into those pillars of practice. And yeah, like having the confidence to go for that and pushing back against senior leadership, like that's huge. We always say it's so important to incorporate aspects into those post and professional specific competencies that you are hugely passionate about and you have those interests in, and it's really individualized and personal to your situation. We love to see those things reflected in portfolios, and we're even though it's a tricky time, we're really proud to see that you're really pushing for this and we're really passionate about it, and you've reflected it in your portfolios. I guess that just shows how the portfolio can be, as I said, individualized and really personal to you. And as Hannah said, keep on going for it, keep on pushing for it. You absolutely have influence around senior managers' decisions, and you are showing leadership traits from so early on, where you're saying, we're getting, you get active engagement from other physios now and other parts of the organisation. So this really can be transferred throughout your whole career.
Yeah.
And we're so good at advocating for patients. It's really nice that you're advocating for not only yourself, but your fellow professionals. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the fact that I feel secure in the part of the team I am at the moment, I think gave me the confidence to go for that. If I was probably in a less stable position, I think I would have shied away from that opportunity. But because I feel well supported in the team I work in at the moment, that gave me the confidence to kind of push myself and, go for it. Because they gave me the support and they said that they thought I'd be good in that kind of position. It wasn't what I kind of thought I'd be doing when maybe a few months ago, I didn't think I'd be writing emails to the regional director and putting in formal complaints. But I think having the kind of the support of my direct team gave me that confidence and that base to kind of push back and stand up tall against those problems. So yeah, I think being part of a nice close-knit team is really important. Yes. I think it kind of transfers through so much of our work life if you're happy in the team that you're in.
Absolutely. Oh, and yeah, even outside of work, it can have a huge impact on your well-being and mental health. If you have a supportive team and manager, you feel ready to take on those challenges, don't you? So it's great to hear that. So important. So you've already obviously touched on your CSP Steward. Was there a particular reason as to why you wanted to take it up, or because it sounds like you're really passionate about supporting others? I feel like that's really coming through.
I think it was around the pay that kind of initially, that was the kind of the battle that I wanted to fight. In the past, I've also done some kind of mental health first aider training, and I think supporting other staff members in that way, kind of through difficult times, is an important part of being a CSP steward. So I think that appealed to me as well. Like you said, kind of supporting others.
I really feel like you'd be great at, ensuring that you incorporate that throughout your whole career.
So I think, it's kind of creating that supportive team, supporting those kind of peers and colleagues that I work with. I think that's so important. And I think it's something that can get lost, particularly when we're all stretched. We all focus on our own tasks and we don't appreciate the team, and we are there and we can lean on each other. And if we make use of each other, we'll all be kind of we'll get through it together and be a bit happier because of it.
Absolutely, yeah. Well said. So, going back to preceptorship, you always like to hear what you feel your favourite part of the programme was.
Instantly, my brain went to the quizzes on the. Some people have got quick fingers on those quizzes.
Yeah,
they are. They're hard to win those quizzes.
It's nice to have that light-hearted moment, so you can absolutely say they're a favourite, because we love them too. We love really riling the competition up in others. So yeah, sure.
It's always funny to see what random icon you get allotted, whether you're like a lobster or something.
So would you say kind of the meetings, or?
I think the meetings, that social aspect of the meetings, I think is quite nice. When I've not been able to attend the meetings, when I've watched them afterwards, I don't feel quite as engaged when I'm watching the recording compared to when I'm in the meeting. Particularly because I've already mentioned networking with others in the breakout rooms is something you miss when you watch the recording, which I think is why it's so important to try and get that protected time during your work day to attend the meetings. But like I said, it can sometimes be a struggle depending on your team.
Okay, so what would your top tips be to somebody who's starting in their first post?
I think probably, as I've already hammered on so much about how important a team is, it's kind of make yourself part of the team. I think it might feel a bit awkward to begin with, but just the simple things like get to know everyone, just learn their names. Even if it's just things like offer people a hot drink, learn what they drink, get to know what they drink, and then just get to know people a little bit and connect with your team, so that you don't feel isolated. I think it can be difficult coming in as a band 5 into a team that you're probably going to think is more experienced and knowledgeable than you, but there's a lot that you can bring to that team, because although they've been doing the job for a long time, you'll have all that university knowledge fresh in your mind. And I've seen it when I've been supporting students in my job at the moment, that there's things that you forget a little bit as you settle into a post. So don't be afraid to kind of let your team know that you can support them in some ways, and that they can support you in other ways. So yeah, become part of the team, I think is my tip.
Yeah, I really like that. I don't think anyone's said that one before, and you're right, actually, just the simple thing of learning how does somebody like tea or coffee, and actually, because then if they're having a challenging time, without even being asked, you can make them a drink. Actually, that goes such a long way.
Wow, I remember that coming back from community visits, handing them my lunch. I'd sit down and take a deep breath, and then my colleague would be like, right, sit down, I'm making you a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Those words,
and that's wow. As much as I joke about it, and I was like, oh, I bake a cake. Actually, taking some biscuits or something and really integrate within the team.
Yeah.
Be the social set.
I was the social set. Yeah, because that, links to getting to know your team. If you're going outside of work, it's just a little bit more informal, isn't it? And you're having not so much those discussions around your pensions and just work. You get to know how they are outside of work, maybe their family situations and what their likes are, and then that's when you kind of start to bond, and you might have similar interests.
Yeah.
And we always kind of linking to what you're saying, integrating the team. Find your passion within the team as well, what you bring to that, that particular thing that you can bring. And I always say my suggestion could be social set. If you're really, maybe a very sociable person, like bringing people together. That's what I did. And I made sure that I was like, right, we're going out this day. Who's coming? I need your deposit. But I had so much fun.
Well, yeah, mine was always the cake rater.
Yeah.
Didn't mind if you baked it or you brought one in. Mine was the cake rater. And, it would make sure that, as you were saying, making a hot drink, it would make sure that we would actually all be in the office for that half an hour in a week where we'd just talk about the cake, but we'd talk about what was happening with us. It wasn't just work, Charles. What was happening and checking in with one another.
Yeah. Really good topic there. Love that.
Thank you.
And just to round up, would you recommend the Preceptorship to another newly qualified AHP?
Yeah. I think I've sung its praises already. I think that my answer to that question is probably going to be quite obvious. Yeah. I think, like I said, about all those reasons, that is that constant, particularly as a rotational job post, having that kind of external support that you mentioned gives you that kind of outside perspective and bigger picture. Having the meetings where you can network with similar people, get tips from them, how they're surviving, see what they're doing. And it's also nice just to kind of see what the other professions out there are doing, because I think you can get quite kind of absorbed in your own profession. But as AHPs, we all have to do a lot of multidisciplinary working. We're not all just working purely within our own profession. Maybe some physio outpatient clinics might argue otherwise, but...
They might have a podiatrist in there. I think it's really important, as you say. I'm glad that you would recommend it. Obviously, if we'd have had the discussion of its praises and then you said no, I would have been surprised.
Yeah, that would have been pretty awkward. Just no.
I think it's really important to say, if you are in a team that maybe isn't prioritising preceptorship, or you're struggling to find your way with preceptorship, then reach out not only to other preceptees maybe in the group, but to Felicity or myself. And also, I hope that you can take inspiration from James to advocate for yourself, even if it's not becoming a union rep or a steward, but actually, there is a framework for preceptorship now. Get to know that and advocate for yourself about your own development and well-being. But we could also support you through that and rely on the community around you for preceptees as well, because everybody's going the same thing, maybe at different rates, and we can help.
Yeah, and just that point, James, about you thought that, I don't know, that we were going to say, why are you not engaging? And it was coming more from a supportive. If you have had some disengagement, maybe because you are going through a tricky time, that's absolutely fine. We are so flexible with our time frame for preceptorship as well. We've had people that have taken 3 years to complete it because they were rotational, they had parental leave within that. There's lots that can go on and can affect your engagement with preceptorship. So we've had lots of people that kind of dipped in and out, and we always are so passionate and encouraging those to complete it, especially when you were so engaged at the beginning and so you're like, yes, this is kind of what I wanted from the get-go. So yeah, just that message as well, that doesn't matter if you've had blips. We are here to support you through them.
Human factors are unavoidable.
Oh, thank you.
And on what note, thank you so much, James. for joining Felicity and I today. It was really nice to actually come and see you in person. And just want to say huge congratulations for completing your preceptorship, for facing and tackling the challenges that you have been on your path so far. We really hope that you continue to really, enjoy the physio profession and long may it reign. Yeah. And thank you for listening. Remember to get in touch with us if you've got any preceptorship queries.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye.